start by being mindful. So, hi guys, and today, so this is the last meditation video, the last section of the full Satipatthana. So enjoy our last meditation video. We won't be doing it. We'll never be doing it again. Well, we might do other videos, but not the Satipatthana. So enjoy it. So first we start by being mindful of the breath, then we go each of the 7 aspects of awakening. Mindfulness. The first number 1, be mindful of the breath. Be mindful of the breath. Go.
So the first aspect of awakening is mindfulness. We're going to be mindful of each of the 7 aspects in turn. So we start by being mindful of mindfulness, and we do that by being mindful of the breath. Just follow your breath. And then while you're doing it, ask yourself, am I being mindful of the breath? As long as you can answer that question, doesn't matter if it's yes or no, then you're doing the task. So the little monkey is just following his breath and asking himself, is he being mindful of the breath? He's also aware, when he does each aspect, he's going to be aware of what does that aspect arise from. And mindfulness arises from just deciding to be mindful, which you can do at any time. All right.
Notice whether your mental states are skillful or worldly. Ask if I'm noticing whether mental states are skillful or worldly.
Okay, go. So the second aspect is noticing whether mental states are skillful or worldly. So in order to do that, we're going to give ourselves a range of different types of mental states to work with. So you start by being mindful of your breath and broaden your attention to your body, and then to anything that's happening around you, maybe sounds around you, and then anything that happens in your mind. Just notice whatever mental state arises without controlling them, just letting them arise and letting them go. And then, this is the crucial point, you notice for each mental state whether it's skillful or worldly. Skillful just means it's helpful for flourishing and your happiness in any situation. So mindfulness itself is skillful, concentration is skillful, compassion and kindness are skillful. The simple having of sensations is worldly. It's just a mental state. But being mindful of those sensations would be skillful. Now, as you are noticing these mental states, you've got to be mindful of noticing them. So that's why you ask yourself, am I noticing whether mental states are skillful or worldly? And you just keep asking yourself that. And as long as you can answer that question, that's the task you're doing for this particular phase of the meditation. The other thing to be aware of is what does noticing skillful states, whether mental states are skillful or not, arise from? Well, it arises from mindfulness. So each aspect arises from the previous aspect.
Be mindful. Ask yourself, what effort is there in being mindful of the breath?
Good. So the third aspect is the effort or energy that goes into making skillful states. So we're going to be mindful of the breath. So that's the skillful state we're going to be in, mindfulness of the breath. And then we're going to be mindful of the effort that goes into being mindful. So what effort goes into being mindful? Well, it could be bringing your attention back to the breath when it becomes distracted. It could be holding the goal in mind of following the breath, being mindful of the breath. Now, what you might find after a while is the breath becomes interesting in its own sake. You're just being mindful of the breath because the breath is interesting. Then rather than calling it effort, we call it energy. You'll just have a certain energy that draws you to the breath and keeps you on the breath. Now, what does effort or energy in making skillful states arise from? Well, the effort to make skillful states depends in part on being able to notice whether mental states are skillful. So this aspect arises from the previous one. So incidentally, if at any point you're doing a certain aspect, you can always feel free to drop back to the previous aspect if you think that will help. And you might notice whether that does help build up more of the succeeding aspect.
Be mindful of the breath and the body. What pleasure rises in my body?
Good. Go. Now, the next aspect is the pleasure that arises from skillful states. Now, what Siddhartha claimed is that if you sustain concentration, a pleasure arises in the body. You might experience as waves or as tingling and can pervade the whole body. In terms of this meditation, we're just asking ourselves, what pleasure is there in the body? And as I just said, according to Siddhartha, this aspect, the bodily pleasure that comes from skillful states, arises from energy in making skillful states.
Be mindful of the answer. What do I feel?
Now, the next aspect is calm. So you're asking yourself, how calm do you feel? And this aspect arises from pleasure, especially as the pleasure subsides, you're left with a calm. And the reason for that is the pleasure takes away the pull of other distractions. And that's why calm can follow from pleasure. So now you're just asking yourself, how much calm do you feel as you're sitting there following the breath?
Be mindful of the breath. Exhale and my concentrate.
Good. Now the next aspect of awakening is concentration. So in being mindful of the breath, you can ask yourself, how am I concentrating on the breath? And this aspect arises from calm. Calm helps your concentration. Now maybe that was waves of pleasure, I don't know. That's a physical response that can happen. And as I said before, you can always drop back to previous aspects and then build yourself back up again. So as that, if that's pleasure, the little monkey's feeling, as that subsides, you might notice calm, and as that subsides, you might notice concentration.
Be mindful of the breath. Exhale to feel equanimity.
The final aspect is equanimity. Concentration helps with equanimity because in sustaining concentration, you are practicing not being reactive to the pull of pleasures and pains, but keeping your mind on the target. And so after sustaining concentration, notice whether the equanimity factor has arisen. And in all of these meditations, the goal is just to be mindful of the way that factor is present. So if you're being mindful that you're not completely showing equanimity, then you've done the job. You just be mindful of what equanimity are you feeling while you do this. And that is the final factor. That's the 7 aspects of awakening we've just very quickly gone through.
Alright guys, so I hope you like that video because that was the last video we're going to put out. It's for Satipatthana because we've now finished it now. So I'll see. So
Anything you want to say about?
Because it thinks about how your body behaves and stuff. Now I've shaped it a lot because I'm very hot for some reason.
So that was a feeling of heat you're feeling.
But then when
Do you want to put your shirt down, little one?
I'm cold.
Yeah. So what this one is doing, you know, when we did the hindrances, we started the Satipatthana. I think the heating came on, that might have been it. When we started the 4th Satipatthana, we were getting rid of the hindrances, little one. And then when we're doing this one, we're building up the positive states, you see, the skillful states.
So see you again for a long time. Bye guys.